Welcome to Crescat's Market Call, featuring our macro and activist mining research. I'm Kevin Smith, Crescat's founder and chief investment officer. Before we get started, please read through our important disclosures being shown now. These and additional disclosures regarding the risks involved in the type of investments we will be discussing, as well as the fund's performance, can be found on Crescat's YouTube channel or on our website using the QR codes on the slides. The type of investments discussed on these videos can carry significant risks, including risk of loss. The videos are intended to be general discussions of macro investment themes, the mining industry, and news with respect to the companies in our activist metals portfolio, and are not intended to be investment advice or an offer of investment advice or services. Crescat's managed funds only accept accredited investors, and the discussion in these videos has been prepared with that level of audience sophistication in mind. Any forward-looking statements may or may not come to fruition. If you enjoy our videos, please click on the like button and make sure you are subscribed to our YouTube channel to get notified of upcoming episodes. You can also follow Crescat Capital on X for ongoing macro research and important news updates on our activist metals positions. If you want to learn more about Crescat's investment strategies, we encourage you to reach out to our head of investor relations, Merrick Iwahashi. His contact information is on the screen now and can also be found on our website at crescat.net. Welcome, everybody. So we've got our usual format today. I'll start off talking about our strategy and the funds, just a little bit of macro. Tavi will get into the bigger macro presentation, and then we have Quinton. Now, Quinton has pre-recorded his segment again, which he did yesterday. He's been doing a lot of traveling. He's on his way to visit some more of our companies in British Columbia, and in the recorded video, he was in Vancouver Airport, so there may be a little bit of background noise. I apologize for that, but he does have some very exciting updates from his Yukon site visit in the prior week, and so I encourage you to pay attention to that. So let's get started with my part of the presentation. So our funds, we showed this 2 weeks ago when we had the early returns. This is just kind of the refined, updated estimates for June 30th and year to date across our funds. All 5 Crescat hedge funds are in the top 10 of the entire Preqin hedge fund database for year-to-date performance, and we're really excited about that. We're having a strong July month today too across the funds, so things have been going really well for us year to date, and I expect there's a lot of momentum ahead still for. Not that it's going to be up every single month, but in general for our activist metals strategy in particular, which is the largest theme across all of our funds, we just have a lot of really strong tailwinds, still very good valuations across our portfolio in our analysis, and good growth tailwinds still ahead for the whole mining industry. I think it's really early still in the mining cycle. Tavi will talk about a lot of macro reasons that supports that. But we just put out a new letter. It's called Discovery, the Foundation of Value Creation. And I highly encourage you to go to our website and check out our latest investor letter, where we really talk about our activist metal strategy in more depth. And anyway, let's keep moving here. So one of the things that I really like to highlight about our global macro hedge fund strategy, our global macro fund, by the way, is the most comprehensive fund in terms of our investment themes at Crescat. We can invest in any asset class, in any macro theme. We have a variety of macro themes. So the activist metals theme is our largest exposure, but we have a number of other themes, including our are short related themes. And this is a hedge fund along with our long short hedge fund that does short. I mean, we do actually have some hedge type positions and short positions. A lot of hedge funds out there are kind of long only funds in disguise. We're not afraid to short. And one of the things that, as a result of that, and the almost 20-year history of the Global Macro Fund, since inception, it's had what we call a negative downside capture ratio. And I know this sounds crazy, and what the heck does this chart mean? But I want to explain it, because what it means is that on average, in months when the benchmark is down, negative months, our Global Macro Fund has actually gone up. And so a negative normally downside capture for a hedge fund would mean if the market's down, say 5%, and you only went down 80% of that, you outperformed in a down market. You only went down 80% as much. But a negative downside capture ratio, what it's showing is that we actually go up on average. We have gone up on average during down months. Past performance is no guarantee of future returns, but it illustrates that we do have short positions in this fund, and they do deliver in down markets. And so let's just say, if you look at that minus 41.8% negative downside capture ratio since inception versus the S&P 500, what does that mean? It means that on average, let's say that in down months, if in any one month, if the market went down 10%, let's say, that on average our fund has gone up 4.18%, up 4.18%. So I know it's a little counterintuitive. It's got a minus sign in front of it, but that's actually something that's pretty darn cool. And it's it illustrates that we're contrarians. We're not afraid to short. And when the market is at overvalued levels and offers potential returns from short positions, we have short positions. We've had short positions historically that can deliver, and we're still trying to maintain that exposure today. So, for instance, in February and in March of this year, when stocks went down, our funds, our global macro and long short funds, went up during those months. That actually happened this year, and we've had some successful trading, and employing what this year, what I refer to as a Nassim Taleb kind of a black swan put option strategy, because when valuations are really high and volatility is really low, as was the setup coming into February and also coming into April, you can deploy a put option strategy. Put options can be cheap, and if you get those big market dislocations, the funds can deliver as we did in those months in global macro and long short. So on top of the activist metals positions, our largest theme, a long theme, which is performing, the global macro and long short funds also offer that that other some of those other themes, and the mega cap tech and S&P 500, NASDAQ 100 overvaluation has been one of our big themes. Don't know what the catalyst is for the bust of this thing, but we know the valuations are extreme. We don't know the timing of the bust, but personally, I still think one is inevitable, and we're going to stay positioned for that. We've been able to reload. We successfully traded out of those puts in April, and that's why our funds are some of the top performing funds year to date. And when the volatility exploded, we rang the register, and that was key. But we've since been re-upping our exposure now that volatility has shrunk substantially, and valuations in the markets are still pushing record highs here. I don't want to dwell on this anymore. Let's go on to the next. So what the letter that we've written this month is mostly about is about our activist metals strategy, and this idea that discovery is the foundation of value creation. Our portfolios, our activist metals portfolio is heavily focused on the what we call the left-hand side of the Lassonde curve, which is the discovery and exploration side of the life cycle of a mine curve, and it's where most of the value in this industry is created. But it's a highly risky early stage type of investment, and the only way that it makes sense to invest in exploration-focused mining companies is in a very diversified portfolio kind of a way. And so that's what we've been able to do, is create this diversified, highly vetted portfolio, which I'll talk about a little bit more. When we finish this month, we will have reached our 5-year track record. So we launched this fund, the Precious Metals Fund, that's what we're showing here, on August 1st of 2020. It's up 28% net annualized average returns over that 59 months. So we're in that 60th month right now in July, and we'll have a 5-year track record on this thing. But since inception, it's been outperforming all of the benchmarks across the board, whether it's the Philadelphia Gold Silver Index, gold itself, silver, the Van Eck Junior Gold Mining Fund, or the Van Eck, the GDX, the Senior Mining Fund. We've been able to substantially outperform all of these things, and I'll get into a little bit more, how we've been able to do that and why we think it's a repeatable process where we can continue to add a lot of outperformance. Let's go on to the next. First, we'll just kind of walk through our top 10 positions. Quinton's going to be talking about a few of these names because he was just on site a few weeks ago visiting Sitka Gold in the Yukon, our 4th largest position, and Rackla, which has been on fire this year and is now risen to our 7th largest position across Activist Metals portfolio. And I'll give you a brief overview of each one of these things. San Cristobal Mining. This is one of the top 10 largest silver and zinc mines in the world. The reason we got invested is because they also have a silver discovery, new discovery, 40 kilometers away from the main producing mine that we believe is one of the largest silver discoveries on the planet. And this one is a private company. And we have placed it into a side pocket, but it's been a home run for us already, and we expect much higher returns ahead. Goliath Resources, you've heard Quinton talk about this a lot. This one's in British Columbia. It's a gold and silver discovery, and they are having a big drill season right now. We expect a lot of good news still to come, with a lot of assay results coming out in the months ahead. El Oro Resources, big silver and zinc and tin discovery in Bolivia, and we were early investors in this one, and we still own a substantial stake and we think this one is extraordinarily undervalued. Sitka Gold, Quinton's going to talk about this. I'm not going to spoil that, other than to say that we think this is another Snowline, perhaps even bigger. SK Mining is in the Golden Triangle of British Columbia, and they have a bona fide silver and gold discovery that it had a lot of traction 4 or 5 years ago when we first got invested. But I think they're going to be drilling again later this season, and I think that's a story that's going to start to come alive again here pretty soon. Tectonic Metals. Now, I just got back. Linda and I just went on a site visit to go see Tectonic up in Alaska. We flew to Anchorage, and we went out on a Cessna plane to attempt to go to a site visit in Flat in southwestern Alaska, and unfortunately, the clouds it was raining on site, and the clouds were too low that day for the planes to land. But we got to meet with management and geologists, and in fact, we just had a a virtual site visit with Pete, the exploration geologist, and we looked at a lot of the core. Tectonic is one of my personal favorites, and I think there's going to be a lot of good news coming from it from this drill season. So stay tuned. They're onto a big gold discovery in Alaska already, and they've done the metallurgy. So that what's really exciting about it is this is a heap leachable style of gold discovery that's a lot like Fort Knox. We think it can be a highly profitable, low capex mine and a really big target for us in terms of the number of ounces that we think this discovery can ultimately be. Rackla Metals, again, I'm not going to spoil the story there because Quinton was just visiting the site, and we think they're onto a discovery. It's not an official discovery yet. We need to wait for the assays to come back. But this one is really exciting, and it has been moving up substantially in the market this year. Alaska Silver also going to have a big drill season this year, and onto it, already has a big high grade silver discovery in Alaska. Blue Lagoon going into production. This is one of our stories that has a lot of exploration upside, but is already in production, or will be going into production soon. I just opened the mine. And Snowline Gold, of course, has been a big winner for us. I mean, yes, we have trimmed our position back in Snowline to be able to redeploy it into a lot of these other great stories, many of which have been performing even better than Snowline recently. So it's been the right thing to do, but we still have a core position in Snowline Gold as well. And let's go on to the next. These are some disclosures regarding the next slide that I'm going to show, which is my last slide, and but it's just read it at your leisure. But let's keep going here. So again, our letter is about discovery and about our activist metals strategy. So I'm just going to kind of walk you through at a high level, what that is and what that means. We have 75. If you look across the top, we've got 75 different positions in the activist metals portfolio. So diversification is really key when you're in this early stage, high risk exploration segment of the mining industry. There's over 2,000 publicly listed mining companies globally, and most of these are junior mining companies, and they're small and micro cap. They can be highly risky. So being able to really sift through all those opportunities and vet them is just critical. And that's why we have Quinton Hennigh, PhD geologist with 40 plus years of experience in this industry, helping us to do that. And I think that's really, really critical. We have 38 of our companies already have bona fide discoveries. What does that mean? It means how we define it, and this is criteria that Quinton learned when he was working for Newmont Mining. When a company has 3 or more drill holes that are greater than 100 gram meters, so the number of grams of grade times the meters length of the drill hole, when 3 or more drill holes over 100 gram meters on a gold equivalent basis, that's the discovery. And it could be silver, it could be gold, it could be copper as the primary metal. But this is our definition of discovery, and it's an indication. If you have 3 or more 100 gram meter holes, it's an indication that you can have a profitable, something that ultimately can be developed into a profitable mine. No guarantees. A lot more drilling needs to be done. You need to come out with the official resource and the feasibility studies, and et cetera, and raise the capital to build the mine. But it's that early indication, and And normally, as those discovery holes are coming in, that's when the greatest appreciation in these stocks and the most wealth is created in this industry. And it's why we have this diversified approach. Most of the companies in our portfolio are public, but 18 of them are private, and all the private ones are pre-IPO situations or ones that we do expect to get public or merged ultimately with another public company. But we will take positions in private companies too. We have 39 of our positions are what we consider activist position, which we define as greater than 5% of the company on a partially diluted basis that we own. So if we own more than 5% of the company, including through our warrants, we consider that an activist stake. Activism to us means a lot of things, not just owning 5% or more of the company. And I won't get into everything that activism means, but in this prezo, but we do have big activist stakes in a number of positions. And at the median of all 75 companies in our portfolio, we own 10.3% of those companies on a partially diluted basis. So what's exploration all about? I mean, it's about field work and geochemistry and geophysics, but it's also about drilling. And ultimately, a gold discovery has to be proven out through the drilling and the assays. Our companies collectively have 104 drills operating around the world right now, and that is more greenfield drilling than all the major gold mining companies combined. And it's safe to say that over the last 5 years that we've been active in this strategy, our companies have consistently had more greenfield drilling going than all the major mining companies combined, and that's why we've been able to come up with 38 bona fide discoveries, and we think we have a lot more coming. The total target, total target discoveries on a gold equivalent basis for us is 278 million ounces of gold equivalent. Now that's Quinton's geologic estimates. This is not all proven resource that we've proven up yet. Many of our companies do have official 43-101 compliant resource that is factored into this overall target. But this is Quinton's geologic estimates of what we think our companies ultimately can deliver in terms of metal, and that's 278 million ounces of gold equivalent. To put that into context, that's more gold than is owned by the U.S. Treasury, the largest owner of any entity of gold on the planet today. So we have a lot of big gold discoveries and incipient gold discoveries across our portfolio. This is how we've been able to deliver the performance year to date. This slide also shows the breakdown of silver, gold, copper in terms of the target. We have a lot of primary silver targets, especially with San Cristobal and El Oro being such beastly targets. We have a lot of gold. We've got copper, nickel, zinc, and it kind of shows the breakdown by primary metal here. And the map over there shows where our companies' targets are located, by the relative size, and in that top map it's by the relative size in our portfolio. I'm sorry, it's by the relative size of the target gold equivalent discovery, and in the bottom map we're just showing the representation of the number of drills that we have operating in those locations. What's interesting to note about the map is that we're very picky about our jurisdictions. So we don't have anything in Central Asia. We have only one company in Africa, which is in Eritrea, a country that we like, and you can see that most of our of our companies are located in North America and South America. We have a lot in Australia and the Pacific, but these are the important gold belts and the important jurisdictions where you can actually build a mine in politically friendly jurisdictions towards mining, and this is where we are focused. So that's going to be it for me. Let's get on with the show with Tavi.
All right, thanks, Kevin. You guys can hear me okay? Well, let's get started. I think there's some news that potentially Trump is thinking about doing a stimulus check with some of his the capital that has been returned from the tariffs and other things. And I think that's important to point out because it's such a big curveball when it comes to we're going to grow our way out. And I've always not made a joke about it, but I sincerely think that growing your way out just means inflating your way out of a problem. And there's a combination of factors, as I laid out in this presentation today, in this slide, that basically is underpinning the inflationary era that we're living through right now, and creating a shadow Fed chair to lower rates and imposing fiscal dominance. It seems to me that's very likely to take place as well in the next 6 months or so. We saw recently this money supply. Sorry, I said money there, but it's actually money supply is hitting new highs. And that's an important aspect. And we'll talk about this in a second. The big, beautiful bill is certainly adding to the case with all the extension of the 2017 Tax Act. And also, if you looked at the depreciation component that is now 100% in year one, likely to be the case for the next years until if and when things ever change. And so those things are going to be really boosting, in my view, construction spending in a large way. Lastly, we're also seeing metals doing extremely well, and other commodities too, which should point to an inflationary problem here very shortly. Usually metals tend to have a very good, are usually very good leading indicators when it comes to inflation. And lastly, something I've been very focused on, which is the dollar weakness. We're seeing one of the worst dollar performances since the 1970s. And I've been of the strong view that that's just the beginning, that we're likely to see a much bigger focus of this administration towards really devaluing the dollar versus other fiat currencies, not just versus hard assets. So let's go to the next slide. In the next slide, we're looking at the money supply. As I said, this is a June number that just came out, and we're hitting new levels again. Something that, as you can see, we saw this growth during 2021. We're seeing that growth again this time around. But I also think it's important to remember here is that combination of policies. It's not just money supply. It's money supply with lowering rates to increasing fiscal spending, and all these things are the combination of all these things are extremely inflationary and must be part of our thinking as investors as well. Let's go to the next chart. On the next chart, I'm showing the correlation and potentially the disconnect that is, in my view, a leading indicator of commodity prices, mostly driven by metals. We've seen gold take the lead in the last year or so, and now we're seeing other commodities. I think 2 weeks ago I mentioned the potential for copper to start reaching that price discovery moment or phase. And I think we certainly have started that more. We've seen that develop over the last few days here. But we're also seeing this with platinum. We're seeing this with palladium. We're seeing this with silver, of which we're going to touch here in a minute. But agricultural commodities are doing very well too. The only part of the commodities space that is just not that has been, in my view, consolidating and it's getting potentially ready for another phase of an appreciation is the energy space. And I've been of that view, and I think if you look at the energy or commodities index, of which aggregates natural gas and oil specifically, but if you look at oil specifically versus the white line in this case, which is inflation expectation by the market, which is the U.S. 10-year break-even rate, what you're going to find is that they're very similar charts as well. If you think break-even rates are going to be moving higher, i.e., inflation expectations starting to reaccelerate, I believe you want to also look at those other things as well. Now, what I have prepared for this presentation as well, if you go to the next chart, more technically speaking, you can see that commodities, when you exclude gold, it's probably one of the most important charts here, because if you think that the commodities are leading the way to the upside and are the ones that are signaling that inflation is going to catch up here, it's important to see as well that these important times in history when commodities excluding gold relative to gold are very cheap. In other words, when you look at commodities overall and they're very undervalued relative to gold prices, those are usually times when you want to be invested in commodities as well as a catch-up trade. Again, it is very normal in history to see that gold is the first one to move, and then the others tend to follow. And I think we're just starting to see that catch up of all other resources relative to gold prices. And I'll talk a little bit about that, because I think it has a lot of ramifications on how do we invest as well. Let's go to the next chart. More importantly, if you look at the inflation expectations chart weekly or daily, I mean, you can pick whatever you want. I picked the weekly in this case because we're about to really make, I think it's a 2 or 3 year highs on this chart of the 10-year break evens. And there's been a lot of conversations that inflation is not accelerating, but the market is not buying into it. And I do think it's a combination of those policies I was referring to that is really driving inflation expectation to really start to rise again. And you have to, again, think with what are assets that tend to perform well with inflation. We're seeing a bunch of them, including metals, do quite well over the last few weeks. And I do think it's going to be boosted even further if we see other policies like stimulus checks and all sorts of things that can really change the game here when it comes to inflationary pressure in the economy. Let's go to the next chart. And this chart is, to me, ultimately what's probably going to be driving a lot of other investment ideas that Crescat has so much conviction on, and relates to the dollar cycles throughout history. We've seen in the 70s a movement where the dollar was not a safe haven currency. It was not a time when you want to be buying the dollar when the markets sold off. In fact, you wanted to be buying the Canadian dollar. You wanted to be buying the Japanese yen. Believe it or not, all these other currencies perform very well relative to the U.S. dollar during cycles that the dollar has already turned downwards. And I do think that as I show in the first panel of this chart, we are starting to break down from a major support. And as we see that occurring, I think we're going to hit that 10-year rolling change, which is the second panel of this chart, to move substantially lower over the years. It's not something that's going to happen if it happens. Of course, we're talking about conviction of ideas. Nothing here is a claim that we have a crystal ball of how things were going to work. But in my view, historically, when you have, we can say that the fiscal issue is a problem, and certainly is. And how do you fix that? Well, one step is lowering rates. And as you lower rates, you see the differential of interest rates relative to other countries that causes the dollar to be weaker just from one factor alone. Now, the second thing I want to point out is what happened in the 1970s with Nixon, when he was also imposing tariffs and other things, or at least willing to or wanting to do that. And similarly, the court will also at the time, and I think it was 1971. Also had its own issues with that shift in his stance. And he claimed that this was a way of fixing a balance of payments problem, of which Trump has an even worse issue when it comes to that. And guess what? It wasn't really tariffs that fixed the problem. It was an agreement with countries that had major surpluses with the U.S. At that time, trade surpluses, to revalue the currency. In other words, allow those currencies, i.e. at that time, the first one was Japanese yen, of which we saw a major appreciation of the Japanese yen currency versus the US dollar. I do think there's something really similar happening right now. In fact, if we go to the next slide, we did see a trade agreement being announced, and I know today it's being challenged a little bit. I think those potentially more noise than meat to the idea that they're not going to have some sort of agreement. But what is important about this agreement is potentially, in my view, what was not announced is what we could see of all these trade agreements. In my view, it's very difficult to change the deficits. When you're running a major deficit as the U.S. economy relative to another economy, it takes time to see those trading balances to shift the other way. Now, one way you can adjust that problem very quickly is actually through the depreciation of the U.S. dollar versus other currencies. So I think that my point about this is that I also think that the media is twisting this narrative in a way that I really disagree. Let's go to the next chart. First of all, we're seeing that and I'll show in a minute here as well, but Japan's interest rates have been rising, especially at the long end of their curve. And I think it's been questioning a lot of things. And what the media has been basically saying is that Japan is basically losing control over the JGBs, or the Japanese government bonds. I disagree with that, because the 10 years in if you look at the debt itself in Japan, less than 1/10 of its debt is linked to the 20-year interest rates and above. Okay, so when you say that the 30-year yield is that Japan is losing control over the 30-year yield, they don't even. That's not even the most meaningful part of what moves the needle when it comes to their debt burdens. And so allowing interest rates to actually rise on the long end would give a support dynamically to the US dollar in a large way. How do I show this? Well, you can see this in this line. If you look at the 30-year differential in interest rates between Japan and the US, in other words, as Japan allows its interest rate to rise relative to the US, that's your blue line, it could actually give significant support to the dollar to depreciate. In other words, the yen to appreciate substantially relative to the US dollar. I do think that that's what's taking place here in a very significant way. Now, you don't have to agree with me, and this is why I have a very strong opinion on other currencies doing better than the US dollar as well, of which unleashes a lot of other ideas as well. Let's go to the next chart. And the next chart is just showing the 30-year yield of the Japanese bonds. And you can see that more recently, since the beginning of the year, we did see a big jump, and that it was below 2.5 now, when basically about almost 70 basis points increase on the 30-year yield. I mean, those are really big moves. And you can say that's just naturally what's been happening. Again, I would argue that on the back of all this, what could also happen is that it was announced that Japan would actually invest $550 billion in the U.S. It did not give us any timeline or any details of how that would be spent. Now, gun to my head of what that could be spent, and again, in line with the idea of devaluing the dollar versus the yen, would be in the next chart. When you look at the largest holder of U.S. Treasuries, if you go to the next slide, is actually Japan. Japan holds majority of U.S. Treasuries today, more than China. Now, if you notice in this chart, however, it's their ownership has been basically unchanged. It has not changed over a decade, basically. And I do think that maybe maybe it's 1/3, maybe it's I don't know, 1/5 of that amount goes into helping to prop up the ownership of U.S. Treasuries that also supports interest rates on the long end of the curve in the U.S. and potentially then driving again the yen higher with this type of policy. I think that's more in line with the realm of possibilities in all these agreements between countries. I think this is a blueprint for other economies as well that are running a large trade surplus with the U.S. And we can talk about China, which is a little more complicated. But in my view, when you find a country of which also has a lot of things that could be very helpful for the U.S. economy when it comes to acquiring resources and others to benefit from its own onshoring developments that we're seeing in the U.S. I would point out that the Canada is certainly on top of my mind of one place that may actually see some big changes. If we go to the next chart. The Canadian dollar, surprisingly, at the same time as we're all waiting for all these trade agreements, and we're seeing these ups and downs when it comes to relationships and so forth. If you notice, the Canadian dollar has been bumping on this resistance for some time now. These things are usually, if you look at the option market for a Canadian dollar, it's remarkable because it's got a very low implied volatility relative to what you tend to see when these breakouts occur. You tend to see a breakout from a very important resistance line. What you tend to see is an explosive move. Again, what you tend to see, I don't know if that's what's going to actually play out here, but in markets, you have to have conviction in history and conviction in your ideas and play that out with other asset classes that are related. And when you look at the euro and you look at the British pound and others, in my view, they're leading indicators to the Canadian dollar. And at the end of the day, you may say, well, why even bother with the Canadian dollar, right? I mean, it's not structurally, we're not seeing any changes politically and at the core of its economy. So why even bother with that? Some folks even call it the Canadian peso. But in my view, it's the same thesis that one would find to deploy capital in places like Latin America or any emerging market. If you're of the view that you're going to see some real structural changes in those countries, I think you're very either naive to that idea or just don't understand that it's really more of trying to time a cycle of capital flows rather than a real structural shift of politically not seeing any more corruption, not seeing any more barriers of entry to your country. I mean, I don't think those things are, that's not where I would be betting on. Although those things are all upside potentials, I do think that you must come into something like that type of thesis with a more realistic approach towards this. And I do think that everything in macro is an exercise of acceptance of risk. And when you notice what happened with gold and why did gold move first? Because it's the easiest to understand when it comes to acceptance of risk. Low volatility, lots of liquidity. Who buys it? Central banks. Who needs it? Every economy in the world, because we got too much debt in the world. How much supply we have? Well, it's been very flat production globally. We haven't seen any growth or any major discovery. So, if you think about it, the thesis from a few years back was very solid and much easier to understand as investors start to successfully make money on gold as they did in the last year or so. They start thinking, all right, well, what's the next one in line? And that's where that acceptance of risk exercise begins, either from looking at silver, looking at copper, and now copper, everyone is saying, well, copper, not too long ago, it's too cyclical. It's an industrial-based commodity. I'm not going to touch that. Well, that acceptance of risk has changed drastically over the last few months, didn't it? And now, we're at a price discovery for that. Now, remember that there are other commodities along the same kind of line and those are silver. You're seeing platinum starting to move. You're seeing the mining companies beginning to move as well. And that's just, again, just an acceptance of risk exercise. Now, if you go to the next chart, what I find remarkable is that the Canadian dollar, which was the prior chart, and it's in front of you, the same chart, it's the Canadian dollar versus mining stocks. They have a very strong link. And they did it as well. In the early 2000s, if you notice, there was a separation of those two as well, of which the Canadian dollar was stubbornly going lower and the mining equities were going a lot higher. And then ultimately that drove the Canadian dollar to also enter a bull market, of which lasted for almost 12 plus years during that time. That's when we see those dollar cycles that tend to take, they're usually very long-term oriented. My view is that we're going to see something similar. And it's such a difficult thesis to support for those that have more a political based opinion, or even from a macro standpoint, that again, the acceptance of risk begins, it's at its lowest in the list to get there. And again, if you look at the emerging markets, and some of those that have not moved yet, like outside of Argentina, are in the same boat, alongside with exploration stocks that have started to move recently as well, that used to be in the same boat as well. And I remember not too long ago, people used to tell me, I'm talking about a few months ago, that the mining industry, especially the exploration, the junior mining stocks, as they say, are fundamentally and structurally broken. And I disagree with that, because I think that that's just history playing its course. We don't know how things will unleash and how quickly they do. But naturally, at some point, the capital flows start to start to trickle down into parts of the market that are riskier. I think the Canadian dollar is a great example of that, and it will probably be in the same boat here very soon. That's just my view. And I think when we see a breakout, I think it's going to become more obvious for most investors. Anyways, let's go to the next chart. Let's talk a little bit about silver. There was a very good report on Twitter, I think was Elon Musk, that actually shared, that I thought was remarkable, showing China actually installing more and more solar panels, and the solar capacity of China has increased about 65% over the last year. And you start thinking about this, because this is actually solar capacity staying in China. So not what's been, China is the largest exporter and builder of solar panels in the world today. So you start thinking, so that's just China, what stays in China, right? And you start calculating these things. I know lots of gold and silver investors have pointed out how much silver is in solar panels. The amount seems to be small, but when you aggregate and you see these big changes in capacity, like we're seeing here, it becomes a lot bigger. In fact, I did the calculation, and an estimated amount of about 11% of the last year's annual production of silver accounted for this increase alone from China. This is not counting anything related to jewelry or imports that come from places like India or even China for other reasons, or other emerging markets, or even the US, or the monetary aspect that silver tends to play a role historically as well, that has been, in my view, very much priced out of the market. And so, you start thinking about these things. Imagine if other economies begin to increase their solar capacity as well. I think this could be very meaningful for the silver market. It's just another lag of demand that could be, I think, very strong for silver prices as well. If you go to the next chart, now looking at the price action of silver, usually historically what we tend to see is that gold it starts to move, and then silver sort of takes the lead in a huge way. As you can see, every prior cycle, at least the last two big cycles we've had of gold and silver in the 70s or early 2000s, silver took the lead in a huge way, and we did see new highs for gold. But not only that, silver went well above it, that movement in terms of the rate of change that we saw. And so I think my 2 cents is that on top of it all, you have this cup and handle on the chart, of course, that a lot of people notice as well. And in my view, often what we see in cup and handles, especially in these large macro assets, is that you tend to see an explosive movement that takes out the prior highs. That's my belief. I do think that we're going to see something along those lines, and I find it really important to see. I don't. It doesn't matter to me that silver prices are down 2% today, and I know a lot of people would be questioning these day-to-day movements that to me are meaningless. But I do find it very important that silver is hovering around, right below that $40 an ounce level, of which to me it's absolutely critical to then take that out and retest those prior highs. Let's go to the next chart. Next chart is just showing the gold to silver ratio throughout history, of which, it's a similar way of looking at the prior chart. But this chart, in my view, just goes to show of how much more we could see of a movement in silver prices, despite the fact that we're starting to see that catch up that I said of some commodities relative to gold. We just haven't seen anything yet, in my view. Let's go to the next chart. Using Musk again, I think he's a good source of a lot of information that I pay attention to, and I suggest all of you, not from a political standpoint, from a macro standpoint, to follow as well. And what I found this remarkable, this picture that he posted showing their data centers for XAI. And if you go, the first thing that came to my mind, at least when I saw this, was like, oh my gosh, do we have enough copper? If we go to the next chart, and you see these things, the scale of these things are insane. And you start thinking about this AI arms race that we're seeing. To me, this is very different than the internet revolution. I mean, the internet revolution wasn't a race between countries and trying to get there first. I mean, this is way different than that. It's way different than the railroad revolution as well. From that standpoint, there wasn't no race between countries regarding this. It's almost like a war type of not a fiscal war, of course, that I'm referring to, although there's fiscal wars happening right now in the world. What I'm referring to is these types of, and then you see the NP materials news that I said 2 weeks ago that I thought was fundamental as well. The fact that the DOD, the Department of Defense, is taking a 15% equity stake on a company. When was the last time we saw that? That was in the World War II. So all these things are happening right in front of us, and I do think we're going to see, this crazy need for more and more construction to get into this AI race more and more. Let's go to the next chart or slide. And that, of course, comes to mind with copper. As we see those things developing further, copper is going to be in the forefront of a lot, in my opinion, of these changes in infrastructure of grids and data centers and all that. And as you can see here, copper relative to gold, once again, going back to that those charts at the very beginning that had commodities relative to gold. Well, we're looking at specifically on copper in this case, one of the cheapest levels in history relative to gold prices. And the idea of the first panel of this is just to show that these two charts, gold and copper, are very similar. And I caution people that try to really think of them as completely different metals. Yes, they are. They have different functions. They have different aspects that drive them. But ultimately, once you see the bull market being established for one of them, usually you see for the other as well. And as we can see here, that doesn't make me bearish on gold by no means, but it makes me very bullish and optimistic about copper prices in the future as well. Let's go to the next chart. I'm almost done. One thing that I've been noticing, I wanted to, a lot of these companies, Newmont today did very well and put out some results on their earnings. There's more to come in all sorts of companies. And I have my own models that I try to look for what are these companies mining gold at what price. And I find it remarkable that the prices that we're seeing in terms of all-in sustaining costs, of which you could add more things to this as well. Of course, these metrics are not perfect, but what you can find is a good metric to look at when it comes to production margin of companies. Boy, I don't think we've ever seen anything like this before. I mean, this is a huge difference in price relative to the mining costs that most of these companies are experiencing. And I think we saw an increase of about 10% or so in my calculation of median mining cost per company when you look at the all-in sustaining cost. Gold prices have added another over like $1,500 an ounce on the last year and a half. So it's completely outpacing the growth in cost in a huge way, and what's causing these margins to be where they are now. When you think about that alone, and we're starting to see gold prices to move, we're starting to see margins to improve, we're starting to see the M&A also take place here. What I think it's next is the next chart, and that's one of the most important charts. Is this my final slide? Is the next one where you can see the gold companies. Can we go? There we go. Gold miners are on the brink of breaking out relative to gold prices as well. So we showed you a chart of copper relative to gold, silver relative to gold, all sorts of things relative to gold. But the mining stocks, of which a lot of people have lost faith on and say, again, things are structurally broken, they can't outperform gold for many years and decades, and this industry is broken and so forth. Those are usually code words for something that is about to turn the other way. And guess what? We're seeing higher lows for this ratio between gold mining companies versus gold. And people are starting to do their exercise of risk acceptance, and they're starting to take the risk of buying gold mining companies or businesses that have leverage to gold prices when they produce. And leverage work both ways. When gold prices decline, they also lose a ton of money. But when gold prices are doing well, these companies can make a lot of money. And so, in my view, it's a matter of time until we see this ratio break out from this resistance line. And I think, again, when you see these big downward movements that then break a major trend line, what you tend to see are very large appreciations. Again, this is just my view, and I think we're getting close to that. All right, I think that's it for me. So I'm going to pass it on to Quinton's recording section now.
As is very common this summer, I've been traveling a lot, and I'm doing this through a recording. This is Thursday afternoon. I'm going to do something a little bit different this week. I'm not going to talk about updates one by one per se. I might mention a few at the end of the video here, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through my trip, recent trip up to the Yukon. I think this is a good means to report everything that I was able to see on the trip. We did go to a long list of companies, and I just want to kind of present this as a pretty plain Jane view of how the trip went for me, what I saw, my impressions of things. Basically, it's what I did on my summer vacation. All right, let's go to the next slide. Anybody that knows the Yukon has had to have read Robert Service's very, very heart-tugging poem, The Spell of the Yukon. It really strikes a chord with any gold miner and the experience that many people had up in the Yukon. This is just the first part of the poem, but I would urge anybody that has an interest in the Yukon to read the words of Robert Service. This was painted on the side of a building in downtown Dawson. I thought it was very appropriate for the start of this video, and at the bottom, and somehow the gold isn't all. That's quite a telling line. I'll show you a few things at the end that give you a pause to think about the greater meaning of everything that we experience as humans on Earth. Go to the next slide. All right, anybody that's been to Dawson recognizes this iconic building. This is the Palace Grand Theater. It is where most of the civic events in Dawson take place. We basically spent most of the better part of the 4 or 5 days on this trip working out of this building. The group that sponsored the event was the Yukon Mining Alliance. I thought it was an absolutely fantastic venue and means of showing everyone who was on the trip the investment opportunities in the Yukon. I think they did a fantastic job. I highly commend, especially Liz and Nicole for putting everything together. They did a fantastic job, and it was just, it was almost an out-of-body experience to have meetings in an old gold rush era building like this. Very cool. Go to the next slide. Most of you probably wonder why on earth is a boat in the middle of the Yukon. This actually dates back to the Yukon Gold Rush. The Yukon River is a big river. Most people don't even know this, but the Yukon River, which actually drains out into the Bering Sea, way over in Alaska, far west Alaska. This is a big river that rips up through the Yukon, the heart of the Yukon country here, and one of the best means for accessing this region was actually coming up riverboats, and this happens to be one. This Kino boat has been restored. I thought it was actually very, very cool to see something like this restored to its fullest. But this is how a lot of those gold miners actually got into the Yukon. Let's go to the next slide. This is a panoramic shot. I was standing on the bank of the Yukon River. It's a little bit distorted or stretched because I had to make it fit the screen here. But basically, we're looking at what is, again, a very, very large river that comes right through the heart of the Yukon. This is in Dawson, of course. So we're looking both up and downstream here. Absolutely gorgeous country. It's hard not to fall in love with this region. Let's go to the next slide. So the first tour that I had, and I had quite a few, was actually over to Sitka Gold. This is the landing pad at Sitka. So this is basically the Gold Creek, the alluvial gold operation there, or the camp, I should say, which is situated right next to an alluvial gold operation. You can see way back in the distance there, those peaks that are kind of touching the clouds there. Those are the heart of the Clear Creek project. So that's basically where all these reduced intrusions reside. They're up in the high country, and it is an absolutely breathtaking area. All right, so the start of the tour actually began with Sitka. Sitka is operating in an area near Mayo, which is a small town. It's actually fairly civilized here. There's road access to site. This is a picture of their camp, which is situated on an alluvial gold operation. Okay, so this project, which is seen in the background there, those mountains that are touching the sky, touching the clouds, that is where the reduced intrusions are. This is an ideal setting for an exploration camp. I think the guys have a great setup, great team. I was very pleased to see their operation. Go to the next slide. Now, this is an interesting photo. They actually took us up to a vantage by helicopter, where we were able to land on top of a peak and actually overlook the entire trend of reduced intrusions that extend way up from BC, which is on the left-hand side of this image. You can see a drill cut, a road that goes zigzag back and forth across the mountain. That is the blackjack target right there. That's where they're hitting these great grades. And then as you migrate to the right, you go, you can kind of see the saddle target. It's tucked in there in the high peaks. Then you can see the Eiger deposit, which is kind of a little bit in to the left, or from the left. And then as we move more and more right, we can see Rosgobble, Pokemon, and then way over here on the right-hand side where the mountains are kind of diving off behind the slope in front of us. That's actually where this bear paw target is. That's has some historic high grade. So this gives you a sense of the scale. Okay, like from in this image, from the north, which is on the left, to the south, which is on the right, that is probably 7 or 8 kilometers. Okay, there's basically a whole bunch. Like, you remember the upside down cow? This is basically a whole bunch of reduced intrusions poking their nose up through a huge volume of rock, and each one of these seems to be endowed with gold. Okay, so this is a district scale play in every respect. Excuse me. They were very excited by the progress they've made. They're doing a large drill program. I think I said 30,000 meters recently. Maybe that was a Freudian slip, but I really hope they do drill 30,000 meters. I think this property justifies it. And I think a lot of the results that they're starting to see, the visual indications that they've announced to the public, indicate they're onto some major discoveries here. Okay, so let's go to the next slide and talk about the team. So Gilles, who's our head geologist here, is pointing out some of the core. The core there, I think, is from the Blackjack target, if I remember right. So there's clear evidence of porphyry in there, that kind of black and white speckled rock. And there's just innumerable little quartz vein after quartz vein after quartz vein. And the quartz veins have little specks of gold tucked in with usually bismuth and tellurium and things like this. Okay, so this is a really exciting target. Very good continuity, like they see at Snowline, and very good grades are showing up. Now, over here on the right-hand side, that's a bit closer image. Okay, and I think this might actually come from Rosgobble. Yeah, RG. At RG, we got to see the first hole, which I think they drilled late last year, had a very nice interval of mineralization and some higher grades. And this is what it looks like. If you notice, the porphyry here is almost identical to the porphyry they see in the other targets. So to me, that tells me that the source of the magma, basically the mothership, is sending each one of these intrusions up. So it is truly the cow and udder, upside down cow and udder thesis at play here. All right, and the quartz veins, yes, they again at Rosgobble, they have little specks of EG and stuff, but they also had something else that was interesting. Go to the next slide. One of the things I noticed in some of the veins, or many of the veins, I should say, is a little crystalline yellow mineral that you can see here. In this vein, which is a pretty fat vein amongst most of them, but you can see over here on the wall where it touches the gray, that yellow crystal is, in my view, that's scheelite. Okay, so I saw scheelite in virtually all the veins up and down the interval where they hit gold. So quite curious. I discussed this with the team, and they said they're aware of it. They're starting to look at doing tungsten analyses and so forth systematically. Wouldn't it be intriguing if tungsten was an important byproduct of this deposit? I mean, you got gold, which is great, but you also have maybe a bit of tungsten in here. And just for reference, I think scheelite concentrates right now in the open market sell for around $24,000 a ton. So, I mean, it is a significant, potential value out. I can't conjecture too much, but I just got quite excited when I saw that. Anyway, my summary around Sitka, man, they're hitting it. They are drilling multiple targets right now. They got 3 rigs up there, and just every day it sounds like they're hitting new stuff, all very exciting, and I think they have a district play. Okay, I think it could be a very, very big discovery. Go to the next slide. Okay, the next day we went over to see Yukon Metals. We landed in an airstrip that was actually on the Alaska-Yukon border, so we're way in the far west of Alaska, of the Yukon. And our crew here was deboarding the plane. Then we took a helicopter, go to the next slide, down to their AZ project. And this is an aerial view of the target, the target that they basically first tested here, we'll say, at AZ. This is an interesting target. It's a very big center of alteration. What's driving it? I'm not quite sure. What is the mineralization? It looks like skarn mineralization is certainly evident here. The company does have a number of drill holes into this. They've talked about the visible copper mineralization and such. I think they're quite excited about this, but the sense I got from this property, and look, I don't have many images, is that there's a lot more to this, okay? And I really think the company should do an equal amount of grassroots work, basically soils and geophysics and other means, to look at some of the other potential targets. I say that because when we landed the helicopter here, Ron Burdall, who's as many people know as Scott Burdall's dad, very famous prospector, he was here, and I got to speak with Ron, and he mentioned that across the AZ project, there's plenty more targets to develop and test. This is happens to be the one they tested first, but again, I think if the company spends some time and money, they can define a whole host of new targets to drill. Let's go to the next slide. All right, now this image is just absolutely gorgeous. This is way in the far eastern side of the Yukon. So, in fact, this is right on the border with the Northwest Territory. So we've gone completely across. So we left Yukon Metals. We flew for about 2.5 hours, and we landed in an airstrip right on the Yukon Northwest Territories border near Sitka's project. Let's go to the next, or excuse me, near Racklow's project. Brad, go to the next slide. Okay, so this is the one that everybody's talking about. They did announce visuals from the first hole. They had some of the core boxes from the first hole there when we landed. So I was able to look at these things, and at first glance you look and think, well, that's a lot of granite. Okay, and it is a lot of granite. It's more like a granite, right? But whatever. And it has veins in it. It has little veins of different types. There's some quartz veins. There are quartz veins like you see at Sitka or Snowline or something, but you also see these little dark brownish veins like you see in the center on the left-hand side of tourmaline, which is an interesting mineral. It's basically a borosilicate. So boron is present in the system. What it means, don't know. I don't remember seeing any significant tourmaline in other systems, but this one has it. And then it also has just carbonate veins, we'll call them, that are pretty innocuous, but they tend to have gray bismuth minerals, and that's what you see over here on the far right. Okay, so all of these veins, all the different phases of vein, have gray minerals in them, which are all reckoned to be various types of bismuth, maybe bismuth and telluride minerals. But you see very little, if any, visible gold. I looked and looked and looked, and I didn't see any in these boxes. That was like a hedge fund. It made me recall that back in late 2024, when they first found this grad project, I was at an investment show, and Simon Ridgway, after they had announced the discovery, he had some rock samples from here. And they didn't have visible gold either. In fact, some of them were high grade, I think like 90 grams per ton. And he showed me these rocks, and I remember thinking, wow, there's no gold. Like no visible gold. But there is. It's just, there's gold. It's just tucked into the bismuth. So my conclusion here is that there is so much bismuth and probably tellurium that it's actually masking or hiding the gold. You just don't see the visible gold. Okay. Does that mean it's not a reduced intrusion? No, it's the same style of deposit that we see at Snowline or Sitka. It just has a different flavor to it. And there are examples of deposits like this around the world. In fact, the Wulong deposit, Wulong, Wulong is in China, and it is well known for having, it's a gold deposit, but it's well known for having bismuth and tellurium minerals in abundance. Okay, and I think we have something along those lines here. Okay, go to the next slide. Okay, so we took the helicopter out to the actual property itself, the big hill that you see that's kind of reddish and yellowish and stuff. That is the intrusion. The dark rocks over here on the far right, that's the wall rock on I think on the east and south side of the intrusion. So that's obviously the hornbills, the cooked up sedimentary rocks. But the target itself is that big hill. Okay, now it's hard to get a sense of scale here, but that intrusion is roughly 1.1 or 2 kilometers, I think, in diameter. It's pretty big. But it's also, you get the sense geometrically that this is really the top. It's just recently been eroded down into, and we're in the top of this intrusion that's come up. So it's a big guy, but it's only recently been roofed. Why is that important? Well, it means that the odds are the system is more fully preserved. Okay, now the crew they have there, Armand, I believe, is that head geo there, and then they've got rock-repelling geologists up on that tall mountain, have been finding veins all over this hill. I mean, just everywhere. They're finding sheeted quartz veins and sheeted other types of veins. And all of them have bismuth minerals. In fact, he showed us a few samples they had collected recently. Go to the next slide. It includes things like this. Okay, so these little veins, you can see up towards the top, there's a quartz vein, there's a modified quartz vein, and then there's a kind of a white speck in there, kind of left side of the image. You can see a little shiny mineral poking out. That's an example of bismuth in the quartz vein. But then down below there's tourmaline veins, which are the dark brown or almost black veins. And those actually had very fine bismuth in them too. And then up at the very top, right along the edge, up here in the upper right, there's another quartz vein. And there's little specks, little tiny specks. I mean, some of them are no bigger than a pinpoint of bismuth minerals scattered all through it. We didn't see gold, nope, but we see lots and lots of bismuth. Okay, very interesting. And it is hosted by the granodiorite. Go to the next slide. Okay, these are a couple more photos. The one on the left here is kind of broken such that the quartz vein is better faced, like we can see. And you can see a big old clump, like clot of bismuth minerals there. It's that shiny stuff, kind of the right side of that piece of rock. That is a big clot of bismuth minerals. The gold is probably tucked into mineral phases in that bismuth. And then over here here we got tourmaline veins that have a great bismuth. So you can see the little black veinlets on the right-hand side, but you can see shiny silver bits scattered all through that. Okay, and that's examples of bismuth minerals in the tourmaline veins as well. So, it seems to be present in all of the different types of veins. I'm actually quite optimistic. They do have a discovery. It's just not quite exactly like we're used to at Snowline or Sikasik. That's all right. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, then we flew. This is afternoon of the same day, believe it or not. We flew clear back over to Mayo, or to near Mayo, and in doing so, we passed over a lot of the alluvial gold operations in kind of the west central Yukon area. By the way, alluvial gold mining is a big deal here. Okay, you've all seen the Gold Rush show. This is the heart of that country. And you just got to scratch your head and wonder, wow, where did all of this gold come from? And I think that's a very intriguing question, because for all the alluvial gold that we see, there's really not that much hard rock or basement rock hosted gold deposits that we know are there. But I think that's changing. I think we're starting to figure it out. I think this alluvial gold, the source is well, I won't speak them, unfortunately. I'll talk about it here in a minute. But anyway, we went back over to see Banyan. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. Okay, I'm going to say first that I confess I've always been a bit of a skeptic about Banyan, mainly because of grades. Huge fan of Tara Crystal. I think Tara's absolute rock star. Tara is a Yukoner, born and raised there, and she knows what she's doing. But they had this very low grade resource up until recently. And they've done some work on it. Now, first of all, this is not hosted by the intrusion itself. This is the same type of deposit, so it is a reduced intrusive type system or associated system, but it's actually hosted by sedimentary rocks that are clearly outside of an intrusion, and they have yet to find the mothership that's driving this thing. Okay, so what are we looking at here? Well, we're looking at sedimentary rocks. You can see how they're finely laminated, finely layered. It's actually called foliation when it's kind of compressed and deformed like this. But anyway, you can see that it's a finely foliated rock. And then there's quartz veins scattered through this. And many of the quartz veins, most of the quartz veins, in fact, are parallel to the little bands that you see going through here. So the quartz, which is white, tends to be parallel to the foliation itself. And a lot of the gold in this system is actually hosted by those quartz veins. All right, and look, there's enough of them that it generates quite a big endowment, a cloud of low-grade gold. But the guys at site, and I'm very impressed with some of the people she's got there now. She's got a geologic crew, some new members in there. She's got Kai, who's her COO, I believe. And, these guys are starting to look at this thing harder and harder because they're advancing the project towards development. Okay, now, what does this mean? Well, look, this is, it's, if you let a computer define your resource and you just let it kind of blow, I've talked about this before with El Oro, for example, down Iska, okay, you can get a big cloud of low grade. But if you get some geologists in there and they define it, they domain it, they basically constrain the computer's ability to distribute grade through the rock, you can actually get a more clear view of the grade of the deposit. And they have restated their grades here recently. And the doggone thing is graded more like a gram per ton. Okay, so they have something like 4.5 million ounces at just under a gram per ton. Well, this is a fantastic deposit. Now it's easy access. It's near Mayo. There's even cell service there. Okay, I mean, this is a great place to build a mine. But not only that, they have some really nice a nice grade. Okay, now it's even high enough grade. I think it could be milled. Okay, which is really interesting. So it's not, we're not looking at just a heap leach operation. Maybe there's validity to doing heap leach too, but we can even see a case for milling. Why do I say that? Because Fort Knox deposit over in Alaska, which was actually started production in 1996. It started out almost the exact same grade as they're seeing in this newly stated resource, about 0.96 gram. And they milled it. Okay, I was there on opening day at Fort Knox, and I got to see the first bench of mineralization, sheeted quartz veins, and I thought, wow, they're milling 1 gram rock. That's incredible. Well, today a gram is like $105 a gram. It's crazy. Okay, so yes, this is really interesting. I got very excited, and I also got excited by something else. Go to the next slide. Okay, when we were looking at some of the display core that they had out, there were areas where they hit high grades. Okay, so the sample on the left is a piece of core where they were hitting, I think, 100 plus gram per ton. And the one over here on the right, I think they've got some scheelite in there too, which is interesting. But they hit, I think, a few tens of grams per ton. And then what struck me was, look at the veins. Okay, that vein on the left and the right, those veins are going more down the axis of the core, not across, like parallel, like I showed you earlier. Okay, so what does that mean to me? Well, in my view, my brain, it says that there are veins in this deposit that are probably, basically subparallel to the angle they're drilling. They've traditionally drilled this thing, and they're carrying the high grade. Okay, what does that mean? It means that they need to change the drill orientation in certain cases, and basically test through from different angles. Because I think, by virtue of the fact that they're drilling to optimize cutting across the laminations, cutting across that foliation, there are high grade veins that are basically subparallel to the angle of the drill hole, and they're not seeing them as routinely as one would if they were drilling in a different direction. I talked to Tara about this. She agrees, their geologist agrees, and they will be doing some different angle holes instead of just south to north like they have. They're going to start putting some holes in, maybe north to south, and even some from east to west and stuff like this. Yeah, I think, if anything, this is telling us there might even be more grade upside to this whole story. So again, very excited about Banyan. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, again, one of the things about this West Central Yukon, alluvial gold in almost every single creek. I mean, it's just prolific everywhere you look. So we were flying out the next morning. We went to a project at White Gold. White Gold was a story about 15, 16 years ago. Very hot story in the Yukon. I think Underworld, I can't remember exactly how it all worked, but I think Underworld made the discovery. It went into Kinross maybe, and then it somehow got regurgitated and has come back out. But I think this White Gold story, I think I made a gross assumption about what I thought it was that was proven completely incorrect. So let's go to the next slide. Okay, look, I apologize because I'm a geologist. I tend to lose my focus and only focus on rocks, and I don't take nice pictures of camps and helicopters and crap like that. Okay, but I like rocks, and this really caught my attention. Okay, so what are we looking at here? This is core from White Gold's project. Okay, it's high grade, high temperature metamorphic rock. I had no idea the host rocks here were high temperature metamorphic rocks. They're basically brittle or crystalline rocks. And you can see these suckers are absolutely riddled with little quartz veins ranging from dark gray to light gray. Okay, there's just quartz veins all through this. And you can see some of the gold grades here. The grades are posted on the little silver strips here. Very nice grades. Okay, now when I saw this, my jaw just about hit the table because I've always viewed the orogenic deposits in this area as being kind of boring. Okay, I thought they were just low grade clouds of gold, like 1-2 gram rock, that was hosted by Quartz Carbonate, Stockworks and stuff. It is in a way, but this actually reminds me of something very special. Okay, the mineralization here looks exactly like a couple of deposits I have some familiarity with. One is called La Herradura. Herradura is Herradura. It's in Mexico. It's in Sonora, Mexico. When I was at Newmont, we had a joint venture at La Herradura, and we took the thing from 500,000 ounces to over 10 million ounces through drilling over about a 2-year period. This rock that you're looking at right here looks absolutely like La Herradura. It also looks like the Mesquite deposit, which Newmont also owned. Mesquite is in Southern California. Now, La Herradura and Mesquite sit on what's called the Mojave-Sonoran megashear. Okay, it is a crustal scale structure it's think like San Andreas Fault. It's a massive structure, and it's that structure that released fluids from deep in the crust to come all the way up to the near surface environment and form these unique orogenic gold deposits. So you could call them epizonal in many regards. Okay, but they're basically brittle orogenic systems. When I say brittle, I mean shallow crustal level orogenic systems. And I'm telling you that's what's going on in the Yukon. Why is there so much alluvial gold in the Yukon? It's because there is a major crustal break here. And all of these brittle rocks have been shattered to heck and back. And a lot of them have been flooded with these little tiny quartz veins. And all of these little quartz veins are kicking off gold. Okay, and I think it can explain why there is so much gold around the Dawson area. Okay, it is basically an analog for the Sonora, Mojave-Sonoran megashear. And I think that this particular area could host tens of millions of ounces. I kid you not. I think it's very exciting. So I actually am very intrigued with white gold and the coffee project, which Newmont owns to the south. I think they're all part of the same genre. In fact, anything under the old Dawson area is probably the same genre. So very excited here. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Okay, then we flew over. This is midday. We flew over to Fireweed. Okay, and I had not been out to McMillan Pass before. This is the first time I went out there. You can see from the mountains here, it was great when we got there. It was actually quite ominous, but a beautiful country. And a lot of the dark colored rocks you see, the kind of bluish cast, is actually because a lot of this is sedimentary rock that actually hosts the zinc deposit at McMillan Pass. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, this is a picture of some of the zinc core. You can see it's a pretty high grade system. You got, in this case, just under 5% zinc, 17% lead. Look at that, almost 150 grams silver, like almost 5 ounce silver. That's pretty remarkable. Okay, and it's a big intercept too. Now look, I've been talking reduced intrusion and gold, and look, I'm traditionally actually did a lot of my initial work in geology in sulfide deposits, so base metal deposits. So I get excited about this stuff, and I do think McMillan Pass is going to have its day here. There's a lot. It's probably one of the biggest endowments of zinc, lead, silver in the world, and it's scattered amongst a number of deposits through this country. And I think that with the Lundins backing this, I think it might have its day here. Okay, so they're doing some intense work, that's advanced level work that should move the project hopefully in the direction of production at some point in the next decade or so. All right, let's go to the next slide. Now we also saw their tungsten project. They have a deposit called Mactung, Mactung. So McMillan Pass, tungsten. Mactung is, we'll call it a critical mineral prospect. They have attracted money from the U.S. government and Canadian government recently to develop Mactung. This is some core from Mactung. It's basically a skarn-hosted tungsten deposit. Those little tiny blue dots you see there, that's under black light. That is the scheelite, which glows quite easily under black light, poking its, shining and easy to see. Very exciting stuff. All right, so this is a deposit that's been around for a long time, but it might have its day here. They might actually get this thing up and running. Okay, now where is Mactung? Let me show you the next one. This is absolutely jaw-dropping. We flew up there on a helicopter. Okay, to the next slide. All right, and you can see here's an old shed, probably from the 1970s. But this is the Mactung site, and you actually feel like you're on top of the world. There's peaks with snow still on them in the background there. This project is up on a high peak. It is a very large resource. I think it's tens of millions of tons of high-grade tungsten oxide, I should say, in the form of scheelite. And it's really the biggest endowment in North America of tungsten. Okay, so U.S., Canada, everybody sees this as a critical source for tungsten, and now there's money to back it. Also for infrastructure, I think the money that goes into infrastructure here will benefit a lot of the other projects in East Central Yukon, even over into Northwest Territories like Rackla. In all respect, is not that far away from here. Okay, so go Lundins. Let's see if we can get a mine built here. Okay, go to the next slide. All right. Now, I had 2 days. That the Fireweed tour was the last official tour we had with the Yukon Mining Alliance. But I had 2 days to go see some other projects. Okay, and when I say other projects, one of them was one I already talked about. But like I said, I'm just walking you through my experience. Okay, so what we're going to look at here is trifecta. This was like day 4 for me, and you can see here, we flew in by helicopter, but we're standing on a road cut, and we're looking at Mount Hinton. This is basically the valley at Mount Hinton project. This is where a huge amount of alluvial gold has been shed. There's an alluvial mine, believe it or not, down at the end of the valley that's currently in operation. And the gold source is clearly coming from here. Now, what's really intriguing is just over to the right of this image is the Keno Hill district, and that's a famous silver district. The Keno Hill veins are a few kilometers away, but they actually trend over in this direction. Okay, now I didn't quite have an understanding of what their concept was here until I was on the ground and I could see it firsthand. But basically, the veins at Keno Hill are lead zinc silver, and they're believed to be the distal expression of a reduced intrusion, and the reduced intrusion is thought to be centered in this area. Okay, and what they're actually exploring here is they're looking for that reduced intrusion, but they're also exploring the veins that are more proximal to the reduced intrusion where they become gold rich. Okay, so a lot of the white quartz that you see, say, in the left-hand side of the image here, those white quartz pieces are coming off of veins. And they're basically the same vein sets that we have over Keno Hill. So you go from Keno Hill, you're the silver end member, and then you come back through here at Mount Hinton, you're into the gold-rich member. There is also silver here. Interestingly, there's pretty high silver. But we're in a very robust area that, for whatever reason, don't know, the old-timers actually didn't exploit the gold veins in this country. That alluvial mine was found, I think, in 2017, so it's a very recent discovery. Good on them. This is the kind of discovery I like to see in this day and age, to find very high-grade gold veins like this. Go to the next slide. And this is an image. Steve was a geologist with Archer Cathro. He came on the trip with, and we didn't have a lot of time here because the weather was kind of terrible. But he showed me a number of the veins. And basically, what we're looking there is a quartz vein breccia, very high grade. In many places there is visible gold. There is grades of tens of grams per ton gold on these veins. And again, those quartz veins, like you see there, are extensions. They're basically the more proximal version of precious metal rich veins that are closer and closer to the reduced intrusion. Now, the reduced intrusion is that is a target they're testing. It's probably buried underneath what would it be? The east, the far western part of the property. But they're trying to poke a hole down there, or they were when I was there, to see if that intrusion is there. But in the meantime, they got these veins, and it really struck me, based on the photograph and the next photograph. Go to the next image. That these, in their own right, go one more. There we go. Okay, these veins in their own right are quite exciting, and this is an example of what they're hitting here. So you can see 6.7 grams gold and 186 grams silver. That's 6 ounces silver, by the way. over 7.25 meters. Okay, you can see their quartz veins are often banded or sheeted. They tend to have a degree of brecciation, meaning they're broken up a bit, but they're very high grade. Okay, and this in its own right is a good target for this company. I think they have just in huge extent of these things. I mean, literally kilometers of strike on these things. So really intriguing. Go to the next slide now. All right, we went back to Rakla. I had a whole day at Rakla, kind of to myself. The initial visit was with, group the Yukon Miners Association or Alliance group, and I love people, but I don't like people sometimes because I don't get to look at rocks so much. But when I get it going myself, I get a lot more time to look at rocks. All right, so we went in again. Simon asked me to come out, and I had a really good tour. All right, so it was raining cats and dogs. Unfortunately, I did not get out to site because of the moisture, but I got to look at a lot of core. And I wanted to show you a few more holes from Rakla. This is Wednesday, so it would have been three days after the previous photos I showed you. Go to the next slide. Okay, they had some more core that had been freshly drilled there, and over here on the left, I thought this was really intriguing. There's actually a vein right on the broken end of that core there, and you can see that there's a shiny blob stuck in there. Now I showed you some shiny stuff earlier, but that is just a whirlwind. I mean, that big thing that looks like a blob of silver, it appears to be a bismuth alloy of some sort. And my hunch is that the gold is actually alloyed, like in metallic form with bismuth. Okay, that's just crazy, but I think that shiny blob there, and wherever we see these shiny blobs, which is kind of all over the place, that's unusually big. Okay, that's a big blob. Most of the time they're, say, less than a millimeter across, but that might be where the gold is hiding. Okay, now over here on the right-hand side, we're looking at another piece of core. It's a broken end, and this was just a complete hedge press because there's not really a vein here, but you can see little shiny white specks here and there. I should have put arrows, but you can see like two on the left there, particularly, but there's more scattered through here of bismuth minerals that are actually disseminated in the granite or the granodiorite itself. Like they're not in a vein; they're just little specks kind of scattered through the rock. And then I thought, gee, maybe there's bismuth kind of just in the magma itself or so. I don't know exactly how to explain this, but it's very intriguing because it doesn't have to be just vein hosted if there's specks out into the granodiorite. All right, go to the next slide. And the other one that convinced me of this was this rock here. This is kind of a weathered piece of granodiorite, but look at all the gray. In fact, the weathering has accentuated your ability to see the gray blobberoos here. Okay, the big boogers of gray stuff that you see all scattered through here are bismuth minerals. I mean, that's the long and the short of it. Now, the red spots that you see, those are probably weathered carbonate. Yes, there's carbonate minerals in some of the intrusive, but the gray stuff, that's where the gold's probably hiding. That's my bet. I don't know. We got to see what the assays say, but that's really intriguing because those blobs are truly just disseminated through the granite. They're not necessarily vein hosted or something like that. So it leaves you with kind of just this creepy feeling that there might be a lot more going on here than anybody thinks. Anyway, we'll see. The assays will tell us. Go to the next slide. Here's a picture of some core, just a random box or a couple of boxes, I guess, where they wetted the rock, and you could see the density of veining. A lot of people say, there's not that many veins, whatever. Yes, there are. Okay, they're just not all stout quartz veins like we see at Snowline and Sitka, but there's a lot of little fractures here, and you can get a sense from these photographs how many different veins are. Again, quartz veins, yeah, there's some, but mainly tourmaline and carbonate veins and stuff like that. So they're just different styles of veining than we're used to. But I still think it's a pretty high density. The bottoms of holes 2 and 3, yeah, they looked like they're more and more veins. So maybe maybe we are a little bit high in the system. I talked to Simon. I said, are you guys going to drill some deeper holes? He said, yeah. They've got a drill pad that they're trying to engineer and put up on the west side of the intrusion. And they're going to poke like a 700-meter hole down, which will truly test the guts of this thing. And just stay tuned. I mean, this is an exciting one. It's exploration. There's no guarantees in life. But if these little gray specks, prove to be a proxy for gold mineralization, and we see some killer results here, that would be just a delightful outcome. All right, go to the next slide. All right, one of the other things I saw while I was there is porphyry. Okay, now there's no veining in this, okay, but there were porphyry dikes coming up through the granodiorite, and I thought this was really interesting. Okay, so you remember I said there was porphyry at I think at Sitka. I showed you some black and white speckled rock. Well, this is a similar porphyry. It's not quite as it's a little bit lighter and not so many big feldspar crystals, but it is a similar porphyry. And to me, it smells like this magmatic phase might be the driver. It could be the driver for all the little veins that we're seeing. Don't know, but you see it expressed as dikes here and there in some of the core. All right, so that's kind of an interesting geologic note. Go to the next slide. Okay, now here's where you just gotta step back and appreciate the Yukon for what it. I mean, this is on the flight back from Rakla. The last day I'm flying out, sun's breaking through the clouds. Finally, and it's just absolutely gorgeous. I mean, look at the scenery here. This is somewhere between Rakla, which is on the far eastern Yukon, but it's actually in the Northwest Territory, so it's way off east, and we're flying back to Whitehorse. So this is somewhere in the middle of nowhere, but just drop dead gorgeous country. Go to the next slide. And here's the last line from that first part of the Robert Service poem. And somehow the gold isn't all. I think this is Miles Canyon or Miles Gorge, which is near Whitehorse. It's part of the river that brought the gold seekers down. This is in the Yukon, but anyway, it's a gorge, very dangerous, but it's also quite beautiful. And this is sunset. I think it was like 11 p.m. near Whitehorse. It stays light a long time there, but I thought I would leave everybody with that. Now, before we end the video, I didn't do updates this week. I just want to mention a few things because there's some newsworthy items. And if I don't catch them all, forgive me because I've been very busy. But basically, I'm seeing some results, or I shouldn't say I'm seeing exploration results coming through from a number of companies who have been out in the field for a few weeks now. Okay, like the news is starting to crescendo. And one of them is Escape. Okay, the crew that we have out there, I'm a director, by the way. The crew that we have out there is doing a bang-up job following up on the high grade that we found last year. There were some very high-grade veins that were found down in the southern part of the property. And they have really expanded the area that they found those veins. In fact, they're starting to link together a lot of the different showings and finding there's good continuity on the veins. So they've taken a whole host of samples, I think over nearly 300 samples. And they're also seeing visible gold in quite a few rocks. So I'm very hopeful we might see some exciting results there. Maybe even be able to define a drill target by the end of the season that we can get in and test. And then another story that I don't want to forget is Newfound. Okay, Newfound did put out their PEA. Again, I don't have slides for it here, but I'm going to kind of reiterate my view of Newfound. While the PEA, in my view, just the 2 hours or so that I looked at, it looks quite solid. But I don't think the resource is adequately portraying, capturing what's really there. Okay, so I think if anything, this PEA, which does show pretty good numbers. It's not huge production per year. It's like 70,000 ounces average or so. I think it's underdone with respect to what is actually going to come out of that deposit. So it's a high-grade epizonal orogenic system. We've all seen the numbers that come out of a lot of the drilling there. In my view, there's just huge upside. I've talked to Eric Sprott about it many times, and he agrees. And I think we're all going to just have to wait until they they build a mine there and see how fantastic that deposit is. I will try to catch a lot more updates and stuff on the next video we do in a couple of weeks, but this is the best I can do right now, and it's fun sharing all of these slides with everyone. Thanks.
All right, thanks, Quinton. So there's definitely a stream of news that's going to be pouring in here pretty soon, like that river gorge, because there's a lot of companies drilling, and we need so get ready. Assays are going to start coming in. We have a lot of our companies are up in the Yukon, in BC, and Alaska, and the drill season there is it's the summer months, and now is when they're the most active. So there's a lot of exciting stuff we're seeing as Quinton just showed, and I got to see a bunch of the core at Tectonic myself, and I can't wait to get Quinton's take on that. Unfortunately, he hasn't seen it yet, but I'm certainly excited. The geos are excited, and so can't wait for some of these assays to start coming in. Should be a big summer season for us, and it's probably not going to be till mid-August that they really start streaming in, but they should start coming here pretty soon. Anyway, if you're interested in learning more about our strategies, I encourage you to go to our website, read our latest letter that we just put out, and don't be afraid to reach out to Merrick. His contact information is right here. Call him, email him. I think there's a lot. I think the macro tailwinds are really finally starting to flow our way, and especially for this activist metals portfolio. And I think there's a long road ahead of growth for our companies, and I think valuations are still incredibly cheap. The mining stocks are finally starting to outperform and break out relative to gold itself, and there's a lot more upside still ahead. So, Tavi, what do you have for final comments?
Sorry, no final comments. It's been a long presentation this time, so I'll keep my part short. And if you guys have any questions about Crescat, I suggest you to speak with Merrick. He's always free to speak with you and share more about Crescat. So I certainly suggest that. It's nice to see that the mining stocks are starting to move relative to gold. I think that's a huge vote of confidence to our thesis. So even in down days like we're seeing now, so it's to me that's absolutely critical. Anyways, all right, guys, we'll keep short for now and the ending here, and we'll be back in 2 weeks for another presentation. So thanks everybody for following us, for watching us, and we'll be back in 2 weeks. Thank you very much.